Marlon Brando, the actor who turned his craft into a revolution. Brando reshaped the very nature of acting. Yet, as he reached the height of fame, he grew disillusioned with the very establishment that made him a star.
Do you think that people will listen to the views and the opinions of a film star?
Well, if they listen to Ronald Reagan, I think maybe they might put an ear to my views.
This is the story of rebellion and reinvention. The godfather of cinema, a man who dared to change everything, only to question it all. Life for Marlon began in Omaha, Nebraska. He was born on April 3rd, 1924, to Marlon Brando Sr., a traveling salesman, and his wife, Dorothy, a stage actress and hopeless alcoholic. His father frequents bars, whorehouses, and is often absent from the family unit. He is authoritative, unaffectionate, and like Dorothy, a drunk. Marlon Jr. was nicknamed Bud by his family. He was an unruly child, charming but defiant, a prankster and deeply sensitive to the injustices he witnessed around him. He was one of 3 children, with 2 artistic older sisters, Jocelyn and Frances. As the lonely son of alcoholic parents, Marlon began to play act as a way to attract his mother's attention. Suddenly he was a cowboy, galloping through the Wild West. Then he would transform into farm animals, a cow lazily grazing in a pasture. His play acting would try and rouse his mother out of her oblivion. The pain of his neglectful mother and absent father would impact Brando greatly.
I've always thought that one benefit of acting is that it gives actors a chance to express feelings that they are normally unable to vent in real life. Intense emotions buried inside you can come smoking out the back of your head. And I suppose in terms of psychodrama, this can be helpful. In hindsight, I guess my emotional insecurity as a child, the frustrations of not being allowed to be who I was, of wanting love and not being able to get it, of realizing that I was of no value, may have helped me as an actor, at least in a small way. It probably gave me a certain intensity that most people don't have.
The family would move around often before settling in Libertyville, Illinois, where Brando would attend high school. He excelled at sports and drama, but failed in every other subject. His academic shortcomings, coupled with misbehaving, led to him being expelled in 1941. His authoritarian father decided to send young Marlon to military school in an attempt to curb his rebellious behaviors. However, here he was also threatened with expulsion due to insubordination. His dislike of authority would cause Marlon to ultimately drop out of high school, becoming instead a ditch digger. At 18, he would follow his 2 older sisters and escape to New York. The year was 1943. Marlon was living with his sister in a small apartment in the artistic and bohemian area of Greenwich Village. It was a land of opportunity. The boy from the heart of America would have his first taste of the American dream. Acting had been the only thing Brando had enjoyed as a child. And in the Big Apple, he would find himself attending the American Theatre Wing Professional School at the Progressive New School University. The school was the site of a new and revolutionary style of acting known as the Stanislavski method. Conventional acting technique at this time was very different to what we're used to today. Actors focused heavily on a character's external behaviours and presentation. Early 20th century acting was heavily influenced by theatre traditions, particularly for larger stages and audiences. In the early days of cinema, silent film actors were trained to project their performances physically and emotionally in a larger-than-life way, often using exaggerated body movements and facial expressions to convey meaning. This physicality was necessary for the silent film format where dialogue was absent. Furthermore, the early actors in Hollywood came mainly from theatre or vaudeville backgrounds, where clear enunciation and physicality were crucial to stage performance. When talkies emerged in the late 1920s, this theatre influence became apparent. Transatlantic accents which combined elements of American and British pronunciations were commonly used.
Look, Hildy, I only acted like any husband who didn't want to see his home broken up.
What home?
What home? Don't you remember the home I promised you?
Sure I do. That was the one we were to have right after the honeymoon.
As Brando was entering the world of acting, these conventions were slowly being broken. Konstantin Stanislavski was a Russian theatre practitioner who envisioned a new system of acting training, preparation and rehearsal technique. The Stanislavski method aimed to have actors develop more natural performances by studying both the character's internal and external emotions. This practice of naturalistic performance would become standard as time passed.
Students who want to learn how to act can find schools teaching anything from old-time elocution to the more esoteric art theater methods.
Mr. Duncan, let me see how you would portray the character of a chair.
A ordinary straight-back chair?
That will be all right. Simplicity.
Brando would be taught by the legendary teacher Stella Adler, who had studied under Stanislavski himself. From the beginning of their relationship, she respected and valued him for who he was, and encouraged him to express himself through acting.
To me, Stella Adler is much more than a teacher of acting. Through her work, she imparts the most valuable kind of information, how to discover the nature of our own emotional mechanics, and therefore those of others.
She was not just a teacher to Marlon, but a mentor and muse. Stella introduced him to a broader range of culture than his upbringing afforded him. Suddenly, this boy from the farm in Illinois was reading Dostoevsky and Freud and had a growing thirst for knowledge. He would begin theatre acting under Stella's guidance, and in 1944 made his Broadway debut in the drama I Remember Mama. He would be voted Most Promising Young Actor for his role as a veteran in Truckline Cafe, and went on to perform in a wide range of roles and productions in the years that followed, quickly becoming a hot name in Broadway circles. In 1945, he co-starred in The Eagle Has Two Heads, alongside stage legend Tallulah Bankhead. Bankhead represented the old guard of theatre acting, and disapproved of method techniques. Despite this, Bankhead recognised Brando's potential, and agreed to hire him for the role. However, the pair would clash majorly throughout the pre-Broadway tour. Bankhead, who was of a similar age to Brando's mother and also struggled with alcoholism, reminded him of her. Brando's unorthodox approach to acting frustrated both Bankhead and the producer Jack Wilson, as they believed he was mumbling his lines instead of projecting them in the traditional classic style. Tallulah also grew increasingly frustrated with Brando's on and off stage behaviour. Her stage manager recalled he nearly drove her crazy, scratching his crotch, picking his nose, doing anything. After several tumultuous weeks on the road, she ultimately dismissed him from the production. Brando's firing, however, paved the way for a pivotal role that would not only elevate his career, but also make him a global icon, solidifying his status as the new face of acting excellence. In 1947, Brando would be cast as Stanley Kowalski in Tennessee Williams' 1947 play, A Streetcar Named Desire. The production would be directed by Elia Kazan. Brando secured the role of Stanley thanks to Bankhead's unexpected recommendation, as Williams had originally intended to cast her as Blanche Dubois. In her unintentional endorsement, she wrote,
"I do have one suggestion for casting. I know of an actor who can appear as this brutish Stanley Kowalski character. I mean, a total pig of a man without sensitivity or grace of any kind. Marlon Brando would be perfect as Stanley. I have just fired the cad from my play, and I know for a fact that he is looking for work."
On December the 3rd, 1947, Streetcar opened at the Ethel Barrymore Theatre in New York City. The play was a sellout with glowing reviews. Audiences were shocked by its controversial themes and the powerful intensity of Brando's performance as Stanley. His portrayal of the brutal, domineering character captivated viewers, earning him widespread acclaim.
What I remember most about A Streetcar Named Desire was the emotional grind of acting in it 6 nights and 2 afternoons. Try to imagine what it was like walking on stage at 8:30 every night, having to yell, scream, cry, break dishes, kick the furniture, punch the walls, and experience the same intense, wrenching emotions night after night. Trying each time to evoke in audiences the same emotions I felt. It was exhausting.
The play follows the story of Blanche Dubois, a troubled woman who moves to New Orleans to live with her sister Stella and Stella's husband Stanley, portrayed by Brando. Almost immediately, the characters of Stanley and Blanche clash, as Blanche's mysterious aristocratic past contrast with his working-class background and brutish aggression. Stanley's aggression toward Blanche intensifies throughout the play, as Blanche's mental state deteriorates. The play explores themes of illusion versus reality and class conflict. After finding success in theatre, Brando would turn his attention to film. The role of Stanley would remain a significant part of his career, one he would revisit after diving headfirst into the strange world of old Hollywood. This new world was regimented, manufactured, and rife with scandal. At the time, the industry operated under the star system, where Hollywood stars were essentially employees of the studios they worked for. Major studios like 20th Century Fox or Paramount maintained exclusive contracts with a roster of actors, dictating their roles and even loaning them out to other studios for different projects. New names and fictitious glamorous personas that mirrored their movie roles were central to the system. Audiences expected stars to reflect their public life in movie roles and vice versa. By the 1950s, however, the star system was nearing its end. As many actors began to seek more control over their careers and adopt more authentic public personas. Brando signed with Paramount Pictures in the late 1940s, but quickly became known for resisting the rigid structure. Marlon's first movie role would be in 1950 with The Men, directed by Fred Zinnemann, who, like Brando, embraced a more realistic approach to filmmaking.
Wait a minute, what are you thinking? Are you thinking you made a mistake? Is that it? You're sorry, aren't you? You're sorry, aren't you?
What do you
want me to say? All right, I am.
Why did you have to wait till we were married?
In the film, Marlon plays a paraplegic ex-GI. His screen debut received much praise, with The Hollywood Reporter naming him as an important new star in the Hollywood horizon. The Men introduced Brando as a talent to be reckoned with. And the following year, he would reprise his role as Stanley Kowalski in the screen adaptation of A Streetcar Named Desire. To bolster the film's star power, the role of Blanche was played by Vivien Leigh. As Brando was still relatively unknown to the broader public at the time. The film has become Brando's most iconic performance.
The brute who lied and cheated, who promised everything, gave nothing.
Don't you ever talk that way to me. Disgusting, vulgar, greasy. And who do you think you are, a couple of queens or something?
Stanley Kowalski was no longer just a character, words on a script. Brando had made him a living and breathing man.
How long?
He inhabited the role in a way never seen before.
What does it cost for a single phrase like that?
But these are tribute from an admirer of mine.
Well, he must have
This depth, this visceral authenticity became his trademark. His smouldering intensity and magnetism captivated a worldwide audience. He was nominated for his first Academy Award in the Best Actor category. Hollywood had found its new leading man, and his name was Marlon Brando. After A Streetcar Named Desire, Brando's career soared. The following year, he would earn his second Academy Award nom for his portrayal of Mexican revolutionary Emiliano Zapata in Viva Zapata.
You.
Yes, my president.
What is your name?
Emiliano Zapata.
Directed by Elia Kazan and co-starring Anthony Quinn, the film offered a fictionalized account of Zapata's rise from humble beginnings to revolutionary leadership and eventual martyrdom.
When he loved, he tamed the proud Josefa.
You realize that I can take you away with me by force?
By force? I would not prevent you. I would go with you because I couldn't prevent you. But sooner or later you will fall asleep.
And then?
It's Marlon Brando as Zapata, the tiger who blasted the continent.
Brando's performance would earn him another Best Actor nomination.
What are you worried about? We'll find a good piece of land someplace and we'll settle down. And you'll raise horses, and you'll raise melons, and you'll raise me.
And I'll buy you 2 new dresses, both white. I'll go to sleep.
His next role in 1953 was that of Mark Antony in the Joseph L. Mankiewicz film Julius Caesar. He acted alongside theatre heavyweights like John Gielgud. Brando's casting in the film was met with some skepticism. He had acquired the nickname of the Mumbler due to his unconventional performance in Streetcar. However, Brando was dedicated to making the performance a success and sought advice from Gielgud to hone his delivery. Under Mankiewicz's guidance, Brando managed to channel his raw intensity into Shakespeare's precise rhythms.
I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones, so let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it was so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it.
Gielgud was so impressed that he offered Brando a season at London's Hammersmith Theatre, an invitation Brando declined. Director John Huston later praised his performance, calling it a furnace door opening. The heat came off the screen. It would be the 1953 film, The Wild One, that cemented Brando as the cultural icon of the decade. His portrayal of Johnny Strubler, the leather-clad motorcycle rebel, symbolised the restless energy of post-war youth. When asked what he was rebelling against, Johnny's reply,
What do you got?
resonated with a generation. The film, which revolves around a rowdy motorcycle gang causing chaos in a small town, sparked controversy in its time, with critics like Time magazine condemning it for its perceived gratuitous violence. But Brando's character made him a role model to the rock and roll generation, with future stars Elvis Presley and James Dean taking inspiration from his look and attitude. After the release of the movie, the sales of leather jackets and motorcycles skyrocketed. The character blended with Brando's public persona, positioning him as a rebellious bad boy.
There's a line in the picture where he snarls, "Nobody tells me what to do." That's exactly how I've felt all my life.
Who are you, some girl to make sandwiches or something? Your father wears a hat, says he's a big important man, you start telling me what to do? Nobody tells me what to do. You keep kneeling me, if I want to, I'm gonna take this joint apart and you're not gonna know what hits you.
His next role was as Terry Malloy, a dock worker and ex-boxer entangled in a corrupt union controlled by the mob.
You wonder my philosophy of life. Do it to him before he does it to you.
Brando's performance is restrained and authentic. He captures Terry's inner conflict with small, deliberate gestures and quiet intensity.
Come on, I better get you home. There's too many guys around here with only one thing in their mind. Am I gonna see you again?
What for? I really don't.
Ah, come on.
The iconic "I Could Have Been a Contender" scene, where Terry confronts his brother Charlie, shows the pain of lost potential without unnecessary dramatics.
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. Instead of a bum, which is what I am. Let's face it.
As Terry decides to stand against the mob, his transformation feels earned and powerful. On the waterfront, you would see Brando win his first Oscar in the Best Actor category.
Betty Davis announces the Best Actor Award.
Have I a little spread to tempt you all with this? The winner is Marlon Brando on the waterfront.
A memorable moment in an actor's career. Marlon Brando joins a distinguished list of stars honored through 27 Academy Award presentations.
He was the creme de la creme of Hollywood. But was it somewhere he really wanted to be? Away from the cameras, Brando's private life was chaotic. His childhood, shaped by his mother's alcoholism and emotional absence, left him deeply conflicted about intimacy. This unresolved trauma bled into his relationships, fueling a string of high-profile affairs with both women and men. Among his lovers was Mexican actress Katy Jurado, whose fiery independence briefly captivated him. However, his relationships rarely lasted long, marked by control and emotional distance. Brando later admitted he viewed many of his partners as playthings, more about conquest than connection.
With women, I've got a long bamboo pole with a leather loop on the end. I slip the loop around their necks so they can't get away or come too close, like catching snakes.
In 1957, Brando married Anna Kashfi, a British Indian actress. Their relationship was stormy from the start, with frequent arguments exacerbated by Kashfi's struggles with substance use and Brando's emotional detachment. The birth of their son, Christian, in May 1958 briefly brought happiness, but their marriage collapsed 8 months later. The divorce and custody battle for Christian was explosive. Media attention turned the courtroom into a stage. After years of legal battles, Marlon won full custody of Christian. He described Anna as deeply unhappy and manipulative, though his own erratic behaviour likely played a role in the breakdown of their relationship. For Brando, victory came at a cost. His relationship with Christian later became fraught, shaped by guilt, distance, and unresolved family trauma. At the same time, Brando began to reject the polished image Hollywood demanded. He deliberately dishevelled his appearance in public and refused to conform to expectations of celebrity decorum. By the late 1950s, Marlon Brando faced a turning point in his career and personal life. Despite his professional success, he had grown increasingly disillusioned with Hollywood's expectations. Brando saw the star system as a cage, forcing him into roles that didn't align with his artistic ambitions. His clashes with directors became more frequent, and his unpredictable behaviour on set further strained his relationships within the industry. Yet, audiences remained captivated by his authenticity on screen. In many ways, Brando's identity during this period was one of rebellion against Hollywood, conventional relationships, and societal norms. His career choices and personal life reflected a man searching for meaning, though often at the cost of stability. The roles he played on screen mirrored the tensions he felt within, setting the stage for the more outspoken and socially conscious figure he would become in the decades ahead. The 1960s marked a turning point for Marlon Brando, not only in his career but also in his worldview. His output in films slowed significantly, reflecting his growing dissatisfaction with acting and the frivolity he associated with Hollywood. In films like 1962's Mutiny on the Bounty, Brando's on-set behaviour became infamous. He would frequently argue with the director over creative decisions, request endless retakes, and had a tendency to improvise lines. His behaviour helped cause delays and ballooned the film's budget to nearly double its initial estimate. Brando described his work in movies as increasingly hollow, an industry more concerned with profits than meaningful storytelling.
The principal benefit acting has afforded me is the money to pay for my psychoanalysis.
In 1961, Brando made his directorial debut with One-Eyed Jacks, a western that also symbolised his tenure. The project, which began under Stanley Kubrick, became a notoriously difficult production after Brando took over. While the film earned praise, its grueling shoot cemented his reputation as difficult to work with. Studio executives bristled at his perfectionism and refusal to adhere to traditional schedules or budgets. The film's production spiraled beyond its $2 million budget and stretched to 6 months instead of the planned 3. Brando's relentless pursuit of authenticity made him a demanding director, resulting in over 5 hours of footage. The excess footage made editing a laborious task to achieve a marketable runtime. Despite the production setbacks, Brando's performance was once again praised, and the film has since become a cult classic. However, Brando's focus was shifting to more significant battles. He threw himself into activism, a cause he found far more fulfilling than acting. He became a children's ambassador for UNICEF, lending his name and resources to support global humanitarian efforts.
One interested spectator of the UNICEF part of the care program was a man famous enough in the West,
but absolutely unknown to the local Indian villagers. Marlon Brando, on tour for UNICEF, arrived unannounced in the starvation district and was shown around by UNICEF and local officials.
And those who are working in the village...
Brando's visit was far from an in-and-out publicity dash, and, unlike other visitors, he did get off the main road to the interior. All in all, it was a modest performance from Brando, and definitely a non-speaking part.
But his most passionate advocacy was for civil rights and social justice. During the peak of the civil rights movement, Brando emerged as a prominent supporter, using his fame to amplify the cause.
Well, I'm lending money, I'm lending time, I'm lending concern, and perhaps solutions in terms of a plan of getting everybody to contribute not less than 1% of their entire year's earnings to the Dr. Martin Luther King Foundation, which does work in urban renewal, in job training, in education, and welfare.
Brando also organized other actors and creatives in Hollywood to support the movement, forming a coalition of stars who spoke out against segregation and discrimination. He used his platform to condemn racism in America, refusing to stay silent in the face of injustice.
Change in the thinking of some of Hollywood's biggest stars. Today, definitely, many of them speak out. No longer do they fear the thought of losing their fans because of their social or political beliefs. Today, many top stars in Hollywood are actively participating in politics. And these same stars are in the forefront of those battling for civil rights. They're not afraid to even walk in picket lines, such as was the case in Los Angeles when Marlon Brando pounded the pavements to protest an act of alleged discrimination in a new housing development. Naturally, this made page one copy for the newspapers. Is he wrong in doing so? Well, this point has long been debated. Other stars refuse to lend their names, much less their presence, to such causes for fear of being accused of being publicity seekers or hurting the cause because of the publicity being given to them rather than the problem. Then many others simply believe that it isn't right for them to use their fame to attract followers to a cause just because they're associated with it. There are many arguments, both pro and con. The point is, however, many of the stars are long past the debating stage. Stars like Pernell Roberts of Bonanza and Marlon Brando.
He aligned himself with figures like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and joined marches, rallies, and fundraisers.
How much are you contributing to this foundation?
I think it's around $100,000.
Do you think that you, as a film star, as an actor who's made his name and his fame in the field of entertainment, has the right to devote himself to propaganda, no matter what the cause?
I don't like the use of the word propaganda, but I think I haven't the right not to do it. My personal ethic is such that I feel that one must do it if one cares anything about the country, if one cares anything about continuing and creative dialogue between people. I think one must make one's feelings known, and to do it through audio-visual means, radio, television, newspapers, etc., I think is extremely important.
Do you think that people will listen to the views and the opinions of a film star?
Well, if they listen to Ronald Reagan, I think maybe they might put an ear to my views.
Brando's activism during this period was not just public, but deeply personal. He dedicated his time and money to causes he believed in, working tirelessly behind the scenes to create real change. Though his film career slowed, he found a new sense of purpose in fighting for the rights of the oppressed. For Brando, this was the beginning of his transformation from actor to activist. a role he would embrace more fully in the years to come. As the world entered the 1970s, Brando's acting career was considered over. After a string of missteps in the 60s, his reputation as being difficult to work with had unfortunately stuck. But the film industry was changing. The landscape was being populated by auteur filmmakers, telling stories of gritty anti-heroes. It was the perfect environment for Brando's resurgence. The film that changed everything was Francis Ford Coppola's 1972 masterpiece, The Godfather. Brando, now older, heavier, and more reclusive, transformed into Don Vito Corleone, the patriarch of a New York crime family.
We've known each other many years, but this is the first time you ever came to me for counsel or for help. I can't remember the last time that you invited me to your house for a cup of coffee. Even though my wife is godmother to your only child. But let's be frank, you never wanted my friendship. And you were afraid to be in my debt.
I didn't want to get into trouble.
I understand.
Brando brings a commanding presence, in a performance that became instantly iconic. Critics and audiences alike were blown away. He would win his second Oscar for the role. Yet unlike his 1954 acceptance, Marlon chose to instead refuse the award. In a highly controversial and trailblazing moment, Brando sent Sachin Littlefeather to decline the award on his behalf in protest of Hollywood's mistreatment of Native Americans.
I'm representing Marlon Brando this evening, and he has asked me to tell you that he very regretfully cannot accept this very generous award. And the reasons for this being are the treatment of American Indians today by the film industry. Excuse me.
The decision from Brando has become a milestone in how the entertainment industry can intersect with social justice movements, and drew attention to the struggles of Native Americans.
Well, actually, I think the people were booing at me. They were booing because they thought, well, this moment is sacrosanct, and you're ruining our fantasy with the intrusion of a little reality. And I suppose it was perhaps unkind of me and to do that, but there was a larger issue, and it's an issue that nobody in the motion picture industry has ever addressed themselves to, unless forced to.
The moment showed how Marlon was no longer willing to play by the rules, or be just a cog in the Hollywood establishment. The Godfather was only the beginning. Last Tango in Paris followed, another bold move that further solidified Brando's relevance in the 1970s. He would return to work with Coppola in 1979's Apocalypse Now, playing Colonel Kurtz. His involvement with the production was marked by conflict. Brando faced difficulties with the script, frequently criticizing its lines and direction. His refusal to memorize dialogue added to the challenges, prompting Coppola to temporarily halt production to help Brando connect with the character. Tensions on set were further strained by clashes between Brando and Dennis Hopper. Despite these setbacks, Brando's haunting performance elevated the film, which would go on to win the Palme d'Or at Cannes and remains a masterpiece of 20th century cinema.
Horror. Horror has a face, and you must make a friend of horror. Horror and moral terror are your friends. If they are not, then they are enemies to be feared. They are truly enemies.
As the years wore on, Marlon Brando retreated further from the spotlight, becoming increasingly reclusive. The 1980s and 1990s saw Brando appear in a handful of films, but the roles lacked the ambition and intensity of his earlier work. It was clear his passion for acting had waned.
I don't find acting satisfying. I find it odious, unpleasant. It's a waste of life. It's a waste of time.
1989's A Dry White Season was a rare exception, earning him an Oscar nomination and briefly reminding audiences of his unmatched talent. However, by this point, Brando's personal life overshadowed his professional achievements. He was married 3 times and fathered at least 11 children with various women. Among his partners was actress Tarita Terry Paya, who bore him 2 children, Simon and Cheyenne. His family troubles made headlines worldwide. His son, Christian Brando, was convicted of manslaughter in the 1990s for the shooting of his half-sister's boyfriend. The media frenzy painted a tragic picture of the once iconic actor's household. The darkness deepened when Brando's daughter, Cheyenne, died by suicide, adding to his legacy of private heartbreak. Away from Hollywood, Brando sought refuge on his private island in Tahiti. For him, it was a sanctuary, a place to meditate, read, and escape the chaos that followed him. Yet even in paradise, the weight of his losses lingered. In 2004, Marlon Brando passed away from respiratory failure at the age of 80. The legacy he leaves is monumental. Complex, dazzling, and contradictory, just like the man himself. Brando redefined acting, transforming it into an art form before eventually turning his back on the industry that once worshipped him. He was a rebel and an activist, immortalized not only in the characters he played, but in the uncompromising way he lived.